The movie begins in 1995
Perhaps you
Berlin,
heard.
where a well-dressed man named
Anna
Michael
Schmitz
Berg is preparing
recently
breakfast for a
died.
young brunette woman named Brigitte whom has stayed the night with him. The two part awkwardly, and as Michael watches a Berlin S-Bahn pass by outside. The film flashes back to another tram in early 1958
Why did you
Neustadt,
not
West
unlock
Germany
the
during a
doors?
rainy winter day. An unhappy-looking teenage Michael gets off but wanders around the streets afterwards, finally pausing in the entryway of a nearby apartment building where he starts to vomit. Hannah Schmitz, the tram conductor, comes in and assists him in returning home. Michael is diagnosed with scarlet fever and must rest at home for the next 3 months.
That's over
All
now,
Michael
isn't
can
it?
do is examine his stamps and bide his time. After he recovers as the spring season arrives, he returns to the apartment building to deliver a bouquet of flowers to Hannah at her apartment and thanks her. She is matter-of-fact with him but asks him to escort her to work on the tram line. However, when she catches him spying on her as she dresses, he runs away in shame. When he returns to apologize a few days later, she seduces him. He persuades her to tell him her name, Hannah.
Why did you not unlock
Michael
the
returns
door?
to her every day after school, rejecting the clear interest of girls his own age. The two begin an sordid affair that lasts through that spring and the summer when he is off from school. Their liaisons, all at her apartment, are characterized by her asking him to read literary works he is studying in school, such as The Odyssey, The Lady with the Dog and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. He sells his stamp collection so they can go on a bicycling tour in the countryside. When Hannah is promoted by the tram company to a better paying position in an office job, she becomes unsettled. When Michael arrives at her apartment for one of their trysts, she suddenly snaps at him when he tries to read her Chekhov's The Lady with the Dog. They make love one last time and she then moves away without telling him where she is going. Michael is heartbroken. 8 years later in 1966, Michael is now age 23 and attends
I've
Heidelberg
asked
Law
all
School.
of you, and I'm
As
getting
part
no
of a
answer.
special seminar taught by Professor Roll,
Two of the
a
victims are in
concentration
this
camp
court. They
survivor,
deserve an
he
answer.
observes a trial of several women who were accused of letting 300 Jewish women die in a burning church when they were SS guards on the death marches following the 1944 evacuation of Auschwitz concentration camp. Michael is stunned to see that Hannah is one of the defendants. He visits a former camp himself to try
you
to come to
get
terms
married?
with this. The
I
trial
did.
divides the seminar,
Yes, I did.
with one student angrily saying there is nothing to
haven't-
be learned from it other than that evil acts occurred. He tells Roll that the older generation of Germans should kill themselves for their failure to act then and now to stop the Holocaust. The key evidence is the testimony of Ilana Mather, a young Jewish woman who has written a memoir about how she and her mother survived. When Hannah testifies, unlike her fellow defendants, she admits that she was aware the whole time that Auschwitz was an extermination camp. She also admits that all the SS guards, herself included,
This
would
is the
randomly
SS
choose 10
report you
prisoners
all
each.
have-
These prisoners would then be executed to make way for the new prisoners that arrive so that overcrowding does not occur. In Hannah's case, she would choose the physically weak and able-bodied prisoners to their deaths.
Hey!
She would also
Hey,
make the prisoners leave her. Every evening Hannah would randomly choose one female prisoner to read a book to her in her office before taking them back to their cell, as she takes great enjoyment in being read to. Every prisoner that
I've
would
not seen
read
as
books
much
to
of her as
Hannah
I'd
would be
like.
later killed.
I'd like to see a great deal
Further
more of her.
charges against Hannah whilst an SS guard also included 300 counts of murder brought about when an aerial bombing raid by the Allied forces accidentally hit a church where the prisoners were sleeping for the night. The church's roof collapsed and a fire ensued. The prisoners tried to escape the burning church, however all exits were locked. The SS guards, Hannah included, had the power to unlock
The
the
other
exits to let the
defendants
prisoners escape,
have
but they
made
did
an
not. Only 2 prisoners survived, Ilana Mather and her mother. Hannah strongly denies that she personally authorized a report to the church exit doors preventing the prisoners from escape, despite pressure from the other defendants. The prosecutor produces a document with Hannah's signature on it authorizing the church
The marriage
incident.
didn't pass.
She continues to deny the charges by claiming that someone forged her signature. However, when she is asked to provide a handwritten sample of her signature to compare it to the signature on the document, Hannah suddenly retracts her denials and admits to signing the document. In the courtroom audience, Michael then realizes Hannah's secret. She is illiterate and has made many of her life choices to conceal that. Even her choice to join the SS was made because of her desire to avoid a job promotion, meaning
fine
she
now.
would have had to
Thank
reveal
you.
her illiteracy. Without being specific, Michael
Goodbye.
informs Roll that he has information favorable to one of the
Thinking about
defendants
the
but
past.
is not sure what to do
You mean
since the
with you?
defendant herself wants to avoid disclosing this.
No.
Roll tells him that if he has learned nothing from the past there is no point in having the seminar. Hannah receives a life sentence for her role in the church deaths while the other defendants get prison terms of a few years. Michael soon graduates from the law school and gradually becomes a successful lawyer. He marries a young woman, named Mart, and together they have a daughter whom they name Julia. But Michael remains emotionally withdrawn. His marriage ends a few years later when Mart leaves him, and he becomes distant from his daughter. Rediscovering his books and notes from the time of his affair with Hannah, he re-establishes contact with her by reading some of those works into a tape recorder. He sends the cassettes and another tape recorder to her in prison. Eventually she uses these to teach herself to read the books themselves from the prison library, and eventually writes back to him. Michael does not write back or visit, but keeps sending audio tapes. In 1988, the prison's warden writes to him to seek his help in arranging for the aged Hannah after her forthcoming release on parole. He reluctantly agrees to sponsor Hannah. He finds an apartment in town for her, but when he visits her for the first time, 1 week before she is to be released, he is arrested. She tells him that before the trial, she never thought about what she did as a SS guard, but thinks about nothing else now. After he leaves, she commits suicide by hanging herself in her cell and leaves a note to Michael and a tin with cash in it. In her will, she asks Michael to give her life savings to the family of one of the prisoners at Auschwitz. Later, Michael travels to New York. He meets Ilana, Lena Olin in a dual role, and confesses his past relationship with Hannah to her. He tells her that Hannah was illiterate for most of her life but that her suicide note told him to give both the cash, some money she had in a bank account and the tin to Ilana. After telling Michael there is nothing to be learned from the camps and that he should go to the theater if he is seeking catharsis, Michael suggests that he donate the money to an organization that combats adult illiteracy, preferably a Jewish one, and she agrees. Ilana keeps the tin since it is similar to one she herself had owned before being sent to the camps, where it was taken from her to be melted down. In the present day of 1995, Michael reunites with his daughter, Julia, now age 21, who has just returned from a year in Paris. He admits his failings as a father and drives her to a church that he and Hannah had visited during their bicycle tour nearly 40 years earlier. He shows her Hannah's grave and begins to tell her his and Hannah's story.
It was terrible.